Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Today is May 20th, 2019, and you have found yourself in the Rowan County Commission meeting here in Rowan County, North Carolina. We are glad that you're here today, honored that you would join us. We hope you find your time to be of value this afternoon, this evening. So it is our tradition. We start with a couple things. We're going to have a Pledge of Allegiance. We're also going to have our chaplain come forward, Chaplain Taylor. And we begin with what's called a solemnizing prayer. And a solemnizing prayer is for the commissioners. It's not for you. We take very seriously what we do, and we look for wisdom and as we're making decisions on behalf of the county. And so we appreciate the chaplain being here to carry that duty out for us. So commissioners, if you'll join me, we'll get started.
Lord, we thank the privilege to come today to represent the county commissioners, Lord. We ask you to give them the wisdom they need this meeting and down the road for many things they have to take care of. We thank you for their hard work that they do and the love they have for this county. Pray you bless them and help them in this meeting today. Again, thank you for the privilege we have here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chaplain Taylor, for being with us again today. All right, commissioners, we have additions and deletions from the agenda. I'd like to, on the consent agenda, would like to pull item M, the Sports Hall of Fame item, and move that to the active agenda and make that item 3A. If you don't mind, are there any other deletions or additions?
Contract
Yes, the contract.
for the motion picture people.
Yes, so we'll add, let's add as item 3B, the contract for the motion picture the 24th. All right, any other additions or deletions? All right, if not, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, the minutes from May 6th have been provided for us. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Then the remaining consent agenda is before us as amended. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda
So moved.
or approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, then we have public comment period. Has anyone signed up for public comment?
Nope.
Okay. I would like to, well, we've got some folks that normally aren't here, so want to welcome them, but also would like to welcome, we have guests from out of town that are looking at Rowan County, Salisbury specifically, for a motion picture. And so we want to welcome you guys. We met them last week, and they're even though they're not from here, they're really nice. So we have Amy Harmon, who is we met last week, and she's been great to work with and talk with, and also Tony Grazia. Yeah, so welcome. We're glad you're here, and we'll be getting to your item pretty soon. But welcome to Rowan County. We appreciate you coming here. So if y'all give them a All right, so let's see. Let's move on then. No public comment. We'll move to item number 3. Scott Shelton from EDC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Here to talk to you today about CDBG application for the Chewy project. I know we've talked about this off and on over the past several months as the Chewy project worked its way through all the various approvals and steps needed to bring it to Rowan County. For the sake of the people in attendance here today, just want to rehash the project real briefly. As you know, on April 17th, Chewy announced plans to build a new fulfillment center at the Treeview site at Long Ferry Road and 85 near Spencer and East Spencer. It's going to be a 700,000 square foot facility. The company plans to invest $55 million in the new facility and equipment. They also announced they'd create 1,200 jobs by the end of 2025. As far as infrastructure, I've got Mr. Jim Beamer here with SRU to give you some details in case the board has some, but as you're aware, the Trevy site does not have public sewer. SRU has studied this facility and also the site over the years and recommends running a 16-inch gravity line under Interstate 85 to serve the property. Estimated cost is $1.5 million, and estimated completion time is 6 months. And there in front of you is just a basic drawing of how the line would work and how it would lay out. As you see across from the Trevy site, on the other side of 85 is the Town Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. Jim, is there anything you want to add at this point? Okay. After Chewy's announcement that they were coming to Rowan County, the state of North Carolina approved a $1.5 million community development block grant to help pay for the sewer extension. Now, although these funds have been approved by the state, Rowan County still needs to apply formally for the grant. We intend to ask for the full $1.5 million, and we talked about this during previous meetings, but there is a 25% local match. Luckily, all the incentives the commissioners approved for the project previously qualify for the local match. There's no additional cash needed for this grant at this time unless there was an overage in the actual project cost. And just for the sake of the audience in attendance, I'll just talk a few minutes about the program itself. It's a federal program administered by the Department of Commerce, and these funds are intended for local governments for public infrastructure development and improvements, primarily to provide local employment opportunities for people of low to moderate income. Matter of fact, at least 60% of the jobs must be made available to persons whose household income over the previous 12 months is less than 80% of the median income for the area. And those numbers are provided by HUD's Section 8 housing program. And as you will recall from last fall, this is the second of 2 public hearings required for the grant. You held the first one on September 17th. That one was a general public hearing to talk about needs in the community that may require a CDBG grant. This hearing tonight is just for the Chewy project specifically. Input from the hearing will be incorporated into the county's CDBG application. And in regards to the steps after tonight, if the commissioners vote to approve the application, the full application will be submitted to Commerce. We're waiting on the environmental reports now. Those are being finished up. It's one of the federal requirements for the project. If there's no issues, the county will receive an official award letter and grant agreement probably within 30 days. And once that's administered and signed and executed, the next step is to advertise the job itself. So, and then besides that, there will also be a formal I guess, awarding of grant administration duties for the grant, but we would likely be looking at that sometime in July, once the agreements are in place. So.
All right, any questions for Scott?
Scott, I was looking at the map. When you, if you go back to the drawing, there you go. When this comes across 85, and goes on to the Trevy site, will the county have to buy access to any of this sewer line for a next project going down through here, or
to go past the Trevy property further down on Long Ferry Road, or
yeah, let's say we were going there, or even you know, I don't know what's beside of it over there, but anyway, in the agreement, can we tap on to sewer at this point and extend it?
Well, I think that would be part of.
Go back to Longs Ferry Road and then go down that road if we were going to use it somewhere.
You mean that as far as an easement question or as far as just the mechanics of the project?
Easement to it.
Well, I think this would be considered one project, and then if you want to take it further down on Long Ferry Road, there would have to be, separate easements obtained and separate funding to take it closer toward the eastern side of Long Ferry Road.
But would we have to go back and get a right from Chewy to pick up at that point?
No, I mean, this would be public line as far as I would be aware. Yeah. I mean, publicly owned line under public right-of-way.
Public utility?
Yeah, public utility, yes, sir, it'd be all public.
Yeah. All right, that's
Yeah.
one thing I was worried.
Yeah, and I think SRU is actually working on the easements on the eastern side, I'm sorry, the western side of the property now. Is that correct? Yeah, so, but yeah, once it's in place, it'll be a public utility.
Okay.
Would like to mention Jim Beamer. Welcome, Jim, for being here today from the city of Salisbury, and just thank him during this whole project period of a year we were dealing with Chewy. Jim was real instrumental. They met with him over and over, and they put their in-house engineers to work planning out this project. It's been permitted already. They're ready to dig. In fact, they'll start at around 7 tonight, I think, if we approve this. So, but Jim, thank you for being part of the team that brought this deal. It was
Yeah,
important.
and one other thing to note, a boring permit for boring under Interstate 85 has already been obtained. That was going to be a very, time-consuming thing, but SRU is already taking care of that. So,
All right, so if nothing else for Scott, then we'll open up the floor and we'll have a public comment period. So do we have anyone that would like to come forward and speak about this CDBG grant application? Seeing none, we'll close the floor to public comment. And Commissioners, do we have a motion to approve the CDBG application?
So moved.
All right, we've got 4 motions. Clerk, just pick one of the 4. All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Scott, thank you. Yes.
Wasn't on the board up here either, so.
So there's a resolution on the last page of this item called Resolution for Rowan County Application for Community Development Block Grant Funding for the Chewy Sewer Project. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, Scott, thanks. All right, the next item is, let's see, request for Ron Salisbury Sports Hall of Fame. Told Scott ahead of time. Scott is here and is really shepherding this through, came to us about that. So I talked with a couple of commissioners, and just because the item as it's presented in the consent agenda doesn't really have any terms or real specifics from a contract standpoint, we felt like that we would just pull this and ask council if they would just work with Scott and the Hall of Fame to come up with some terms that would be acceptable to both sides. I think everyone here is fine with what your plans are. So we'll just put some terms together, get back with you, and then we'll bring it back at the next meeting. Is that okay? Is that good? Okay. Anything from you, Scott? No, I appreciate it. Okay. All right, buddy. So we don't really need to take a vote, I don't think.
I would prefer that we at least made a motion to offer this pending the agreement, just so that when he meets with Salisbury City Council, he knows he has something in hand.
It's a good idea. Would you like to
I'll
make
make
a
that motion.
Okay, and we have a second?
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. All right, move on to item 3B, which is the contract that's been provided. We have before the 24th Productions LLC. And so, where did Jay go?
He's-
Just followed him out the door? you want to address this? Hate to put you on the spot.
I mean, it's just a general contract between a company that wants to, that you mentioned earlier, that wants to provide, wants to do their filming here, and they'll be using this facility, as I understand it, for a couple of days. And the attorney has looked over the contract.
Jay, anything you want to add on this contract? And if, are we asking just to pass it as is or with some conditions?
The only other additional question came up. Commissioner Green requested a $5 million umbrella policy. I don't think there was any objection to that. And so I think if you pass it tonight, it would at least include approval subject to adding the requirement for additional $5 million of umbrella coverage for liability.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, any questions, any discussion
They
on
nodded.
this?
Jay, is there any wording that we need to put in this contract to be specific about the historic nature of this building and whether it meets what they would put back would meet the codes or not? I know there was some loose verbiage about that, but
There's some language in there that I inserted that sort of takes into account that it's a historic property, and there's certain materials and standards that might be of higher quality than normal construction, and that we would need to see what they're going to do. And I think I included some stuff that no permanent fixtures, no nails, screws, or anything in the walls, things
Yeah.
like that.
I saw that. But I didn't know if we needed to be more specific or not about that.
No, I think ideally what we do is we get to a place where they're going to disclose to us what they want to do, and we'll know what they're going to be doing when they come in. And so we'll sort of be able to control that piece of it, but I don't know that we need anything else.
All right, any other discussion? If not, do we have a motion to approve the location agreement with the 24th Productions LLC with the understanding that they would provide the $5 million umbrella as recommended?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes.
What's the lease amount?
2,000. 2,000.
I don't see where the lease amount is at.
I know it was in,
As I understand it, at a minimum would be 5,000.
It's supposed to be 2,000 for the rental period and the additional 5,000 to cover the cost of relocating the electricals.
does that sound right? All right,
Here somewhere.
It was in the original emails.
yeah, so that's
Maybe that's
where,
where it
that's
was.
where I
That's
read
where I
it.
saw it.
Jay, how do you want to do, you want to write it in as item 18?
Yeah, we'll insert that for the final draft.
Okay, so the motion would be that we approve the location agreement with the 24th Productions LLC, with the agreement on the $5 million umbrella would be provided, and also an item that would lay out the lease amount of $2,000 for the cost of the location plus the expenses to remove and unhook and rehook the dais, which was $5,000. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else? Does that sound okay? You guys, okay. All right, then, do we have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, well, thank you, and again, welcome. And, yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys around. Well, good. Well, thanks. Appreciate that very much. All right. Item 4, financial reports. Ms. Leslie?
The first spreadsheet is annual cumulative revenue comparisons. And through the month of April, we had booked $120.2 million, which was 84% of our budget. Over the last 4 years, that percent of budget has either been 84 or 85%. So we're running as I would expect there. The next graph is annual cumulative expenditure comparisons, and we have spent $118.7 million, which is 76% of our budget, and over the last 4 years, that's either been 75 or 76%. We've talked a little bit about the fact that in a year before the revow, which fiscal year 2019 is that our margins are a little bit thinner. So we've appropriated more fund balance in this year than in the prior year by about $400,000. And we've had some expenditures that we've added during the year. One that we'll be spending, I think, before fiscal year end, which would be the first $500,000 payment to the city of Kannapolis. So with the way things are projecting, I do think that we will see expenditures greater than revenues at fiscal year end. Another thing that's going to show in the financial statements this year is, along with that agreement, we are forgiving the loan for the stadium, and that's about $2.7 million. So that will also impact the financial statements, just so you know.
Will you have to show the full $2 million in 1 year?
We will, because it's booked. For the fund statements, maybe not, but in the full accrual, which are the first two statements, that is already booked as revenue, because that's full accrual accounting. And we operate funds on modified accrual accounting, so it doesn't show there typically. But yes, so it will be an extraordinary event in the financial statements, which will be explained.
I like his question because it's only $60,000 or so a year that is coming from that, but we're going to have to write it all off in 1 year.
Right. Because we now, with that agreement, do not expect repayment of any of the remaining balance, which is about $2.7 million.
But Leslie, that's just a one-time and it's done, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The next graph shows property tax collections. Through the month of March, we've collected $77.4 million, which is 96.5% of budget. And that is the exact same percentage as last year. And the 2 previous years were at 96 and at 97%. And the final graph is sales tax projections or comparison. And for 2019, through the month of January, we've collected $15.2 million, which is 61% of budget. And for the last 4 years, it's been between 59% and 61%. The amount that we've collected through the month of January compared to the prior fiscal year is an increase of 7.5%.
Wow.
That is very good. And if you have any questions, glad to try.
In what month will we finish out the 2019-2018 year for sales taxes?
We received the last distribution in the month of September, and it does get accrued back to fiscal year 2019.
Boy, January always drops off, doesn't it?
Excuse me?
January, and I don't know if you should, yeah, I don't know if, all right, any questions for Leslie? All right, Leslie, thank you. All right, the next item is a presentation of the budget and to schedule a public hearing for the proposed budget. So Manager Church.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PowerPoint working.
Is it shows
Yeah, go to slideshow
across the top?
at the top.
It's getting there.
Then click from beginning. There you go. Thanks. This is the presentation of the fiscal year 20 budget. This is the total budget, but the majority of the presentation will focus on the general fund, which is recommended at $159,476,644. The fire district fund is recommended at $6,171,105. There are no tax increases recommended for any fire department this year. There were two requests, but those are not recommended. Fund 202, emergency telephone, is $607,512. 501, risk management, $1,452,648. Landfill fund, $7,064,277. Airport fund, $4,876,083. And the water fund, $136,000, with a total budget of $179,784,269. The requested expenditures for the general fund were $390,731,030. That's over double what our budget was or is this current year. The recommended budget for the general fund is $159,476,644. So that means there's $250,000 that I did not recommend. So what's in the $390 million request? The majority of it is education capital, which is $226,180,480. Everything else is $164,550,550. So as you can see, the everything else column, $159 million was recommended. So there's about an additional $4.5 million over the capital that also wasn't recommended. Kind of what I'm focusing on is this huge $226 million request in capital. So here's a chart that breaks it out. $36 million is to Kannapolis City Schools. That's what they requested. Rowan Cabarrus Community College requested $43.5 million. That's to build a new facility there on their campus. They have discussed with staff on doing a bond on the referendum, so we did not recommend anything in this budget for that. If the Board of Commissioners choose to do a bond referendum, then that would be looked at another time. And then the Rowan Salisbury Schools is $146.6 million. So what does this budget recommend? Well, it recommends $1 million for Kannapolis City Schools, which is 6% of the educational capital funding, and $15 million to go to Rowan Salisbury Schools. Now, let me rephrase that, not to go to the schools, but to be made available for the schools to borrow to to borrow for the purpose of capital projects, and we would, pay the contractors and pay the invoices on that. But it's, this is for big capital. Now, the 15 million is on top of the 60 million that everyone has been talking about for the last 3 or 4 years that's on that white sheet of paper that folks have a copy of. The fiscal year 21 projection, which is next year, we're assuming there's going to be 60 million available from the debt that's falling off, okay, for Salisbury Rowan. An additional 4 million available for Kannapolis. So if you take what we are projecting will be available in 2021, and you add to that what this current budget recommends, then the total that both school systems will have from the county will be 75 million for Salisbury Rowan schools and 5 million for Kannapolis. Now, with that said, going back to this chart, the total was 226 million. So with this proposed budget and the projected budget next year, there's still an unfunded amount of 146 million to public education. 43.5 million of that is Rowan Cabarrus Community College, which if that's a bond issue, then we would look at that separately, although it would still have a tax implication. The Kannapolis City School is a new school they want to build. That is not included because 6 million is not going to get to the 36 million. And then Rowan Salisbury Schools asked for 146 million. This year's budget and next year's projection will give them over half of that, of what they've asked for. So with the difference, in order to make up the difference, the board would need to increase the taxes by 11 cents to do what's all in this pie chart, which is the total of 226 million. This budget does not recommend doing that. We don't know the needs that are there, but we do feel like the 75 million and the 5 million will meet the current needs of the school system. Moving off the school system for a minute, but we'll come back to it. Just going to read this paragraph. It's fairly boring, but it's important. State law requires local governments to publish a revenue-neutral property tax. North Carolina General Statute defines revenue neutral as the rate that is estimated to produce revenue for the next fiscal year equal to the revenue that would have been produced by the current tax rate if no reevaluation had occurred, adjusted by a growth factor equal to the average annual percentage change in values and anticipated appeals. The revenue-neutral tax rate is estimated to be 62.89 cents per 100 valuation, with an annual estimated growth rate of 1.33%. So the revenue-neutral tax rate, we estimate it would be 62.89 cents. This budget recommends that the tax rate remain the same as it currently is, which is 66.25 cents. That is a property tax base of $13,310 million. That is a 6.82% increase over last year. The sales tax is $1.5 million, or a 6% increase over last year, and the fund balance appropriation to balance the budget is $10,776,253. That is less than we used last year in fund balance, which is a positive thing because our budget's gone up and our fund balance appropriation to balance the budget is going down. Not a whole lot, but it's not going up. In this budget, there are some pretty large capital expenditures. One is the West Branch Library. Now, we budgeted for that the year we're currently in, but we haven't spent it, and we're not going to spend it because the contract's not let. So we have to re-budget for it by law, even though we already budgeted for it. We'll have to book it. It'll go in as excess, well, not excess revenue, but unspent expenditures last year, so to go into this budget. We still have to show it. So is it really, are we increasing it by 800,000? No, we're carrying, well, it's not really carrying over, but so what I'd like to do is carry over, but we can't because we haven't let the contract out. So we're rebudgeting the 800,000 for the library. We're doing the roof over this building, except directly where the Salisbury Post sits. That was my joke for the year. And we're doing the courthouse roof replacement, which is the last portion of the courthouse to be renovated. So the total for one-time capital expenditures in the budget is almost $1.7 million. Now, there is new debt service in this upcoming budget. One is the upfit the Crawford building, and this is something that staff put in the budget. The board can take it out. You may not want it. You know, there's arguments for both sides whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's a building we own. It's downtown. The thought is we can renovate it and put the majority of probation in it and reduce our rental expense that we're currently paying to the private sector to rent offices for probation officers. And they would all be in one building, right in the Crawford building. Now, that's a 3-year term, and I think what we've got budgeted in there is like $200,000 to $250,000, which is a partial payment for this upcoming year. Again, if the board wanted to remove this, this isn't required, it's not mandated, it's about a 10-year return.
Is that 1.1 million per year or?
No.
Over the 3 years?
No, the total cost of the project is 1.1 million. We're going to finance it for a 3-year term.
And then what is the savings, the rent savings?
It's between 70 and 100,000 a year, depending on how many probation officers we can get in that building. And that's still kind of up in the air. Another thing we would like to do with this money is to upgrade the parking lot where the judges and district attorney are at. Maybe put kind of like a brick fence around the area too. We've talked about a bid alternate for that. But again, that's separate than this. The board may not want to do this. You may want to keep paying rent, and it may be that the Crawford building would be better suited to be parking in the future. You know, it's something to think about. So, but it's in the budget. The board would have to vote to go out to bid once it's designed, because we already budgeted, I think, for the design last year. And then you would have to vote again to award the bid, so it's not final by leaving it in the budget. It's just kind of slowly progressing to what staff thinks may be a good thing to do, but it may not necessarily be the best thing to do. The next thing that's in the budget on a 3-year term is the concession stand at Dan Nicholas Park. The park brings in a lot of revenue, and staff believe that this is needed. Now, they have, I think, about $190,000 in a fund that was a trust or
It's donations that have been received through the years
Yeah.
for Dan Nicholas Park.
so the debt service on it would not be on the total, full 750,000. So the total of new debt for 3-year term is about 1.8 million. This is just a highlight of the continuation budget. The year we're currently in, the current balance is approximately 1.5 million cash in the Westin Plaza Fund, and that's for future renovations. The upcoming year budgets a transfer of 1.3 million into the Westin Plaza Fund, and then this also proposes that we do that next year, which it increases as the sewer debt falls off, because the other debt, some of the debt was from social services, to where if, this will be the second year in this plan, and if we follow through this year and the next year, we'll have about $4.3 million to go towards Westin Plaza renovations. So that's money that is sitting there, reserved for the purpose of Westin Plaza.
Aaron, did I hear you right? You mentioned something about social services?
There was some of the debt service that was falling off, that was mentioned in last year's budget message, was for renovations of the current social services
okay.
building.
Okay,
And then some of it, I think, was for Town Creek Sewer.
okay.
And as that debt fell off, we've kind of earmarked it, reserved it, or, whatever you want to call it, to go into a fund to pay for the Westin Plaza. And in about 2 months, you should be getting some plans and design from the architect that was tasked with looking at space for the Ag Center needs. So, but there, like I say, there'll be about 4.2 million at the beginning of 2020. I mean, not 2020, 2022 fiscal year. The expansion highlights, we have a new HR director who's doing a really good job, and we've gotten back to what the county was doing at one point in time that has not done in a long time, and that's to focus on 1/3 of the employees for market and reclass. The board had already last year, well, the fiscal year before, the current fiscal year, approved to do the sheriff's pay study. That has been done in this fiscal year, and there should be a presentation at the upcoming commissioners meeting in June on the sheriff's portion. It was budgeted in the current year, so this doesn't include this upcoming budget. Now, last time I looked, I think that their market study is going to be anywhere from 50 to 100,000. Is it higher than that, over budget?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so, I mean, in there, but this budget can cover that. But what this part of the highlight is that we've studied elections and tax administration. No other employee in any other department is getting reclassed through the method of this budget, other than the folks coming from elections and tax. So, and the total cost for that reclassification of those employees is $44,328.
So let me try to summarize what you're talking about. We had not done any kind of pay study for a long time.
Right.
So a few years ago, we commissioned a pay study, I believe, for the whole county.
Yes.
So we got folks up to where they needed to be in competitive. After you did that, you began to break down then 1/3 of all the departments so that we would not fall behind again. We would look at 1/3 of them every year. So this is the first 1/3 of those. So we're not going to get ourselves caught behind the 8 ball down the road where we've got to make millions and millions of dollars in new investment to remain competitive. We're doing that all every year. We're taking 1/3 of our departments and keeping up now.
Yes.
Is that the way I understand it?
And
Okay.
if you, you know, that 400, or the 44,000,
That's just the cost of the pay studies.
yeah, that's just the cost of reclassifying folks in election and tax. And to give you an idea of what that would look like for not all employees, but some of the employees, one is getting would get a $5,000 increase. Two, 12,922, that would be combined. Then the office assistants getting 2,000. A manager would get a 9,000. Deputy tax collector, 2.5. Two tax collection specialists combined would get 6,000, and then one tax collection assistant would get 5.2. So out of the whole county, those are the only well, one of those that I read off was the Board of Elections are getting reclassified. Nobody else is getting reclassified through this budget process. And we hope to, that the next year we'll do a third, and then the next year we'll do a third. And the expectation of departments to get reclassified every year, which is kind of the current expectation, will go away. That's the goal, but.
But Aaron, for those that are not too bright like myself, this has nothing to do with COLA.
No, nothing.
This is strictly based upon how the bureaucracy here classifies folks for the jobs that they do, but not the cost of living that we have built into our budget every year.
Yeah, but nothing to do with that, because
Okay.
the only method for me to give any employee any type of raise is one, through the personnel board, or two, through the budget reclassification. But this isn't, even though it is an increase to their pay, it's not based on their performance. It's based on on the classification of their job and the market rate.
Aaron, let me ask you a question. How did you determine which departments to start with?
I didn't. Human Services did.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is, elections and tax collections that's not 1/3 of the employees that work here.
Right, well, we did the Sheriff's Department too.
Okay, well, it's saying excluding the sheriff.
Yeah, well, the cost right here is excluding the sheriff, because we already budgeted $700,000 last year.
right.
So this measure is really about an $800,000 measure.
Okay,
But we had already budgeted for it the current year, and if y'all approve it at the next meeting, then well, we're not going to spend it all, but we'll spend 1/12. Well, we won't even spend that.
We will. With an accrual, we will.
Okay, so we'll spend 1/12 of the $700,000 for the Sheriff's Department.
but that's already in this year's budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The next,
Can I,
yes, sir.
maybe we can sit around at your desk. I'd really like to, the importance of this is the word, attrition. And when we're not competitive, we end up being a training ground for folks who come here with no experience. They have us train them, then they leave for better paying jobs, and we end up with a really expensive employment model. So the hope of this is to greatly reduce those costs. So in the end, we have a competitive model, but one in which the turnover rate is as minimal as possible. And so having said that, I'd like to at some point talk with you guys about how can we begin to track that year after year so that we can say to the general public, because listen, in the last 5 years, we've had a nice uptick of revenue. And so we get into this and we think we ought to be able to do anything we want to do from an investment standpoint. But the majority, I think, the majority of the new revenues that we have been bringing in the past 5 years have gone to people. We've invested a tremendous amount in our departments and in our people. And so I'd like to know how that's paying off so that we can show the general public that that is a wise investment by keeping us competitive in the market. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. The next expansion highlight is the part-time salary adjustments. This is for emergency management, parks, and animal services. In a nutshell, our wages are not high enough to get employees. We really struggle to get and keep employees from EMS to the part-time folks that work at the park in the summer and to the animal shelter. So you're going to see that the part-time salary adjustment is almost as much as the adjustments for all the reclasses and all the new employees. So, I mean, it's just economics. It's all three departments are saying they don't feel like they're going to be able to hire people without increasing the wages of the part-time folks. So the new positions, there were requests for 28 new positions that would have cost about $1.5 million, and the budget recommends 13 new positions, and this is, I mean, you're going to scratch your head when I say this is going to cost about $112,000 for 13 new positions. But to explain that, the only new position that is going to be new money, and we really didn't even, we could have reduced that further, but we didn't, is one employee in elections. And the total cost for that position, benefits and all, is $45,000. We think because they've been using so much overtime, that this position hopefully will reduce it better reduce the overtime for the upcoming next 5 to 10 years. So that's the goal of this position. The other positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, are income maintenance caseworkers. We have had a negative finding in the audit for the last 2 years in social services. We hope this fixes the negative audits. Those positions the majority is funded by the federal government, state and federal government. There's 2 more income case workers, and one will be paid by Novant, and one will be paid by Atrium. They want someone at their facility. So they're county employees, but they'll be paid for by the 2 hospitals. Okay? So the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 employees is for custodians. We put our bid, the contract out for bid for custodians, came back higher this year. It wound up, I think the low bid was $264, and we believe we can do it for that, and in the long run, be more responsive to the county's needs in maintaining and keeping the buildings clean. So those are the new positions, and that's the explanation for why the cost is really rather small. I mean, if you look at the money we're already spending.
So currently, the cost of contract cleaning it's currently in the continuation budget at the 264,000. So it would come out of that line and go to salary and benefits. And so that cost is nothing. It's a net nothing.
And that does include their equipment, you know, and all that stuff too was included in the position.
So,
Go ahead.
so out of the 28 requested positions, how many of those 13 are actually requested positions? So the 6 custodians are ones that were not requested, right?
We added it.
Also, you added in there?
We added
Okay.
6 to that, so it would have been 22. Some other highlights, the cost of living is recommended at 2.5%. That is a cost of $1,122,960. Health insurance adjustment, $476,840. Longevity plan, this is something new, and this is an attempt to address compression before it gets back out of hand. And basically what this plan does, if you've been here less than a year, you'll get a 0.5% increase.
If you've
No,
been,
1 year, at least 1 year.
At least 1
You'll
year.
get a 0.5% increase. After you've been here 5 years, you'll get a 1% increase. After you've been here 10 years, you would get a 1.5% increase. And then after you've been here 15 years, you would get a 2% increase. And what that does is, for the folks that have been here a long time, it keeps them from being paid the same as someone who's just starting out, or being paid close to someone who's starting out, and it helps move them along on the pay plan. There's $150,000 for a program that a commissioner is interested in, and that's $150,000. We've talked about the upfit to the Crawford building earlier. That's the one for probation. The Idea Center recommends $75,000. $100,000 for a new park in Woodleaf, where the Woodleaf Elementary School is. The anticipation is after the school demolishes the old school, there'll be some type of recreation facility for the community there. Renovations for Ellis Park at $75,000. Meals on Wheels, $62,962. The next one is the new concession stand. That's the one that we talked about earlier when we were talking about the 3-year debt. And then to education. So Rowan Cabarrus Community College, the budget recommends $100,000 in current expense for operating. There is no new operating money recommended for Rowan Salisbury Schools or Kannapolis for current expense. But like we said earlier, there is a recommendation in this year to provide an additional $15 million to Rowan Salisbury Schools for capital, and that's budgeted at $1.5 million in debt service at a 15-year payback period. And remember, if there is $60,000 available this upcoming, the $60 million, this, what did I say?
60,000.
60,000, yeah. 60,000, yeah. In not this year, but the next fiscal year, 60 million, then that would be 75 million for Rowan Salisbury Schools. And then,
isn't there another 6.5 million available right now?
yeah, we've made 6.5 million available this current year that they haven't spent yet. And this year,
We plan to do the financing in August.
yeah, and this year ends July 1st. So technically, if you take that into account with it, that's 81 million.
82 and a half.
Yeah, they can spend however they want, on capital. And then Kannapolis, 967,500. 15-year payback, 100,000 a year. The last thing, I'll leave you with, the chairman mentioned this in an indirect way, but, times are good, the economy continues to improve. But if we don't continue to grow and expand our tax base, a property tax rate increase will be required to maintain the current and expanded services recommended in this budget. So if we see a down tick in the economy or anything close to a recession, we can't continue to maintain the current and expanded services that's in this budget. The tax rate will have to increase. So I want to give that to you so you can go in with your eyes wide open, knowing that these are good times. I think it's a good budget. It takes care of a lot of needs for the school system, and a lot of needs for the county. But for years like this to continue, we have to continue to grow our tax base. Our taxes will have to be increased. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Your budget is here under your desk. I didn't tell you that until after the presentation. You haven't figured it out yet.
So for future expectations, this year, in this budget, there was a third of the reclass was roughly 44,000, but probably in the future, we're looking at several 100,000 per thirds, because we've already taken out the sheriffs.
It depends. Some departments, we've adjusted their pay several times. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I think we went and did a special adjustment for all folks in income maintenance casework or somewhere in social services because of the, folks were leaving. We looked at building inspection a couple of years ago, so maybe not, because we have been, some of our salary adjustments have been putting out fires, so some of our folks are up to the pay rate they should be. Frankly, the tax department is one of those departments, it's like internal services that just kind of gets overlooked sometimes. Kind of like finance, HR. I mean, those services kind of get overlooked because there's not, there's not a lot of people doing that job like social workers or deputies or paramedics.
And the longevity program over time will, basically immediately, it will, when HR is looking at market, that will decrease the amount that would be needed to make it to market, the amount, that we're contributing through the longevity program.
Oh, and one other thing about the longevity program is, I forgot to mention this. This year, it would be automatic. But any future year is going to be based off performance. So every employee has to have a performance appraisal. If they don't hit the passing mark, they don't get the longevity. So it's also a performance pay measure. So not everybody will get it. So if they're performing well and they've been here a long time, they will get the longevity adjustment. If they haven't, they won't get it. So that's kind of a new twist too, that performance will now be tied to some type of monetary reward.
I would just like to thank you for including the income maintenance folks for social services. our biggest problem over there right now is just burnout. And we don't have enough people to do all the casework that needs to get done. So I really appreciate you including those folks, because that truly is our biggest challenge, burnout.
And Chairman Eds, to address your concerns about the measures we're taking, I mean, I don't have any concrete numbers, but I don't hear any complaining about folks losing mass number of employees. So,
Like before.
yeah, I don't hear that. So I think we've fixed it, and I think these steps will continue to keep the county in a good position where they don't have to come in like you guys were kind of stuck doing your first year and spending all extra money on getting folks up because they hadn't been adjusted in a long time. Because for folks to remember, with county employees, the only way they get raises is when this board votes. The manager I do not have the ability to say, you know, employee A is performing well, here, you get a bonus, you get this, you get that. It just, no employee gets any increase of any kind unless this board votes publicly or the personnel board votes publicly. So, you know, the reason it's talked about publicly is because it's what the statute requires, but there's no mechanism in this county, and in most counties, and municipalities, to where the manager can just give people raises. So it doesn't happen. People do not get raises unless this board approves it, or the personnel board.
Okay, well, can we visit our timeline and remind us, when do we need to have the budget passed?
Last meeting in June, unless we call for a special meeting.
You have the public hearing at June 3rd.
Last meeting in June.
But they need to set it today for June 3rd.
We have to have the budget passed by the last meeting in June unless we call a special meeting, because it has to go into effect July 1st.
Or we can do it interim, is that what it's called, interim budget?
Not want to do an interim.
What do you think, your Congress or something?
We can, I've never done one, but the statute allows it. I don't know how it even works.
All right, so
Voice to the board.
So then it looks like what that would require is the first meeting in June, then we would hold what we did last year. The first Monday in June, we held a budget work session where we got together and asked questions. At 1 p.m., we had our regular board meeting at 3 p.m., followed by a recess. So we didn't adjourn our meeting. And then we came back at 6 o'clock and conducted a public hearing on the budget, and then left it at that. And then we came back and voted the second meeting in June to pass the budget.
Actually, I think last year,
We
after the
voted,
public
didn't
We
we?
passed
hearing.
it, yeah, on the first
Passed
meeting.
it on the
Yeah.
first
We
meeting.
voted and passed, so,
So you can
we-
do that, or if you're not
Yeah.
satisfied or have more questions, you can wait till the second meeting.
okay. All right, so, what we do need to do then tonight, because we're not passing the budget tonight, of course, is we need to set the schedule for the public hearing for the proposed budget. So, the first meeting in June is June 3rd, Monday, June 3rd. And so if we followed what we did last year, which is the easiest model to look at, we met as a team at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we went through all of our questions. We had our regular board meeting at 3 p.m., which is typical. Our first meeting, we meet at 3 in the month. And then we will recess and then call for a public hearing We'll reconvene and then have the public hearing at 6 PM on the 3rd. So if that is acceptable to everyone, is that okay?
And we're going to reconvene at 6.
Reconvene at 6 for a public hearing, especially on budgets, so those who are working during the day will be able to come
Okay.
to public hearing that night. So budget work session at 1 o'clock on June 3rd, our regular meeting at 3. We'll recess and then reconvene at 6 PM and conduct the public hearing. And depending on, I won't say our mood, but questions and how comfortable we feel, we could vote on the budget that night, or we could have the budget vote the second meeting in June, which would be then the 17th at 6 o'clock. So do we have a motion to follow that time frame?
So moved.
All right, any discussion? Mike, you good with that, buddy? Jim?
Fine.
Judy? All right, then that'll be the time. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to that?
Mr. Chairman, we need to adopt the rules for the parliamentarian public hearing. We need to adopt the rules for it, as far as time to speak and those kind of things.
All right, then, so when voting to schedule the public hearing, we will adopt the following rules. I'll make a motion to adopt the following rules. The length of the comment for each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and the comments will be restricted to the subject of the hearing as advertised. Make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, anything else? I would like to welcome a new reporter to the Salisbury Post, Sam, what's your last name? Motley? Who? All right, Sam Motley. I think that'll be your nickname from us. It'll be the Motley Crew, Sam. So Sam, welcome. Where are you from?
Originally, Winston, and then also for
Done with college now?
yes, wrapping up.
And where are you going?
I went to the University of Columbia in Vancouver, Canada.
You're Canadian.
No, I'm American.
You're American. Well, that's good. Well, I mean, I'm not here to slam Canadian. I'm just saying good. So you're an American who went to school in Canada. You know, I just, who knows how that whole thing will show up in the paper tomorrow. I thought that meant you were Canadian, but good. So you're American. But you're from Winston-Salem. Went to, just shut up.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome, Sam. And I look forward to your article tomorrow morning on my,
Move to adjourn.
yeah.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.